Hey guys, welcome back to Balloon Hit Productions for another video. I'm your host as usual. My name is Marcelo Nostroza, and I'd like to welcome you to my 2025 Oscar nominations prediction video. And I'm joined by my friend Matt. Introduce yourself to the people.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Crandall. You may know me from Armchair Directors on YouTube or from Marcelo's podcast, Radio 815, podcast dedicated to examining the works of writer, director, producer J.J. Abrams, as well as his Bad Robot universe. But that's not why we're here today. We're here talking Oscars, everything Academy Awards.
What we're going to do today is I'm going to run down specific categories and we're just basically going to discuss them in general. So, the first category that I would like to talk about is the nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay and Best Original Screenplay. And Matt, what are the nominees for that one?
So, writing for adapted screenplay, the nominees are A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Emilia Perez, Nickel Boys, and Sing Sing.
Um, what's your winner? What do you got?
Now, for me personally, this adapted is kind of a mixed bag, um, because some of these are really strong, others not so much. Like I am, unfortunately, as it will become clear during this live stream, not a huge fan of Emilia Perez as a movie. Certainly as a screenplay, even less so. Nickel Boys, I am not familiar with the source material, but I found the movie to be fascinating, but so experimental. And I feel like everything that really makes it special might not have been on the page. It's actually just the way it was executed. A Complete Unknown, fantastic. But again, the thing that makes that movie really sing is the singing. So it's not necessarily that great in character arcs and that kind of thing, which makes me narrow it down. My two sort of like two horse races between Conclave and Sing Sing. Now, Conclave, based on a novel, really sharp, tense dialogue. It's not overly explanatory. They boil it down and they just keep it zipping along, but like a lot of that is on the page. And so I think the dialogue in Conclave really works. I'm not a huge fan of the ending of Conclave, but Sing Sing has such beautiful characters, emotionally devastating moments, and I think a lot of that comes through in the fantastic performances, but it's also in the naturalistic dialogue and the arcs of the characters. And I think that's on the page. And I think that for a movie that, you know, unfortunately, A24 dropped the ball on, I think this is actually where it has a really good chance of winning an award. So my pick is Sing Sing for adapted screenplay.
I recently saw Nickel Boys. To be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not finished with Nickel Boys quite yet, but Nickel Boys, like Matt said, is such a outside of the box experience. Like the last point of view film that I saw that I really liked, but but it would never even fathom, wisping an Academy Award is Hardcore Henry. But I really, really like how that film puts you in the mind and the heart and soul of the two main characters. Listen, it is a bit jarring. It's a little bit long, and I think that it doesn't fully hit the gas the way it should. By that I mean going all the way. It seems to just go to the edge, but not quite there. I also really, really, really enjoyed Conclave. I am not a religious person by any stretch of the imagination. We'll just leave it there. But I do love films where the writers put all their characters in a box and just watch them cook. And Conclave is filled with characters that are layered, characters that are complicated, and characters that are conflicted with their belief systems and what they want to accomplish. And I think that Conclave really hits the notes that the Academy is looking for. against my better judgment, because I am gonna say it in just a second because it's my fucking show. My pick for best adapted screenplay would go to Conclave. So I'm with you on that one. Let's do this now because I don't want to start screaming at the end of the show. Where the fuck is Dune?
Yeah, I don't know, because if I was actually nominating, Dune Part 2, written by Denis Villeneuve and John Spates, is one of the best adaptations I think you could ever have, because not only does it build on everything that the first movie established, they make changes to the source material, but the changes are so well executed. The whole resolution and trajectory of Chani and the way that the movie ends and the economy of dialogue, that there are so much exposition is crammed into this movie, but it doesn't feel like, there are other people who would disagree that it doesn't feel like homework to me when I watch it. And you can see that that would have been my winner. That would have been my winner. But the Academy in all their glory was not down for the Dune this year, unfortunately.
The fact that the Academy did not nominate Dune, I just don't understand. Dune to me personally, I don't know how you feel. You probably feel differently, but I'm gonna just say this: Dune to me is my Lawrence of Arabia, and the fact that the Academy has sort of stabbed Dune Part 1 and 2 in the back twice is ridiculous. Not to mention the man behind those two films.
So we will now do the original screenplay so we can rack up this writing section. The nominees for original are Honora, The Brutalist, A Real Pain, September 5, and The Substance. Marcelo, what are you going with?
I really, really love The Substance. I was blown away by The Substance. Like I really, really liked its structure. I really, really liked what it was trying to say about Hollywood. The Substance had a violent, dirty look at American culture, and specifically Hollywood culture, that I really, really enjoyed. But there is one movie that really took my breath away, and I mean, it's an aura. I was really impressed with what Sean Baker was able to do with that film. I love the fact that he's obsessed with realism. I know you're not, but there's something just so raw and so present about the way that he layers his characters, and the way that he actually set up Honora for a fall is so tragically beautiful.
This is like the one of the hardest categories of the year, because all of these are quite good. Um, the only one that like I would be really shocked if it wins is September 5, which I think is a very entertaining and tense movie, but its screenplay didn't strike me as anything that special. You know, it really does follow like the real life events. Obviously, Honora, I think, has a really good shot at this award. If it's the Honora train just rolling, then Sean Baker will win, because the screenplay really is representative of what we see on the screen. Um, I do think, again, the substance, pretty good script, but it's the gonzo execution that really make that movie into something special. So I'm not quite sure it's going to win. Same with The Brutalist, where you know it's all in the execution of that movie that really makes it something special, and especially because the second half, where subtext basically becomes text, when you're reading that on the page, the unsubtleties are even worse than they are in the movie, where like it becomes like a sledgehammer to the face with everything it's trying to say. So I think again, I narrow this down to a two-horse race, and if the Honora train is chugging along, I think it's going to be Honora. But if I am picking, I'm actually going with A Real Pain, written by Jesse Eisenberg, which I I love this movie. Um, it's a breezy 90 minutes. It's funny. It's got a light touch, but it also has real deep sorrow, pain, and emotion and catharsis. And a lot of that is on the page. And of course, you know, the way that it's brought to life is kind of what makes it good. But the quirky dialogue and the character arcs are all there in the script, and I think, Eisenberg, it could have been a play, um, which in this category I think is actually not a detriment when you're judging one of the best screenplays. If it reads like a play, then it means that everything you needed is on the page, and that's what's effective. And this is also a category where the Academy likes to reward cool, cool, interesting people. So like your Jordan Peele's, your Quentin Tarantino's, whose movies might not go on and win any other awards, but original screenplay is where they do win those awards, which makes me think that a lot of the people in the room who probably have worked with Jesse Eisenberg over his long career might think like this is where we reward the guy, because other than, we'll talk later about, other than the one award that if A Real Pain does not win, I will fall over. This is like the only other chance to reward that movie, and I do think Anora has a lot of other shots. But if it's just a steam train, then it's going to be Anora. But I feel like it's going to be A Real Pain.
All right, so up next, we have the best achievement in directing.
The nominees are Sean Baker for Anora, Brady Corbet for The Brutalist, James Mangold, A Complete Unknown, Jacques Audiard, Emilia Perez, and Coralie Farge, The Substance.
Uh, oof, Honora.
Yeah, this is the one where like I really think it's going to be Sean Baker.
Yep.
And again, Honora is like the culmination of everything he has been doing. So if you watch movies like Tangerine, Florida Project, Red Rocket, this is the style he has been using and deploying, this naturalistic indie style, but Honora is it firing on all cylinders. So I do think for me it makes perfect sense. Now, again, the Brutal Boys will be shouting at the screen going, "Hey, but what about Corbet?" And yeah, one of the signature, if anybody's going to upset this, I think it would be Brady Corbet for Brutalist. James Mangold, I think the reward is the nomination. I don't think he's a serious contender for this. Jacques Audiard has shot himself in the foot with his horrible comments and his bad movie. And The Substance, I think it would be uncharacteristic for them to reward a movie like that. Again, this is another one where they're rewarding the boldness of vision with the nomination, not the actual award. So I think it's Honora or Brutalist, but I really feel like this one, Brutalist, is so divisive that I think this is, as I said, Sean Baker has been working towards this, and this shows everything he's done in the past, and it's him doing it at the highest level. And I will be surprised if he doesn't win for Honora.
God help anyone within my eyesight. If The Brutalist wins for Best Picture, I will. I'm gonna be really angry. I'll just say that.
We just got to shout out. It still makes me ticked. There's two things about these nominations that really tick me off. Villeneuve also always getting snubbed, like never getting in there when clearly like such a strong vision. And then my other, like, Jacques Audiard, get the fuck out of here. I think it should have been, honestly, Luca Guadagnino for Challengers. And the only reason that movie got blanked is because Luca made another movie and split votes, but his second movie was not good. And if they had just held off on releasing his second movie, Queer, and if he had just put all his might behind campaigning for Challengers, I think it could have been a different story. So my picks off the books would have been Villeneuve and Luca Guadagnino, but I do think it's going to be Honora.
Yeah, I mean, look, just a quick aside here before we move on. What is it about Denis, besides the obvious, that the Academy has a problem with? Because it just can't be the obvious. It can't just be because he's fucking French.
It shouldn't be, because again, fucking Jacques Audiard is in here, right? But it's one of those things where maybe his movies, because they are very specific, and he's doing something similar to Nolan, and it took a long time for Nolan to break through at the Academy.
How long exactly did it take Nolan to break through?
Well, he didn't win jack shit until last year, so a long time.
Okay. Yeah. All right. All right.
Right? Like, and even like when Dark Knight was up for Best Picture, Nolan got snubbed. So it's been a while where, Nolan, he got snubbed over and over and again. And then when he finally got the nominations, he wasn't getting the wins. And I think Denis, part of it is he does such mainstream entertainment, which is weird because on paper it's mainstream entertainment, but in execution, they are artisanally crafted art films that happen to appeal to a wide variety, but they're all, IP, sci-fi, whatever. And that's not where he started, but that's where he is now. And I think that people sometimes take that for granted and don't think of it as on a par with these other films, which of course, as we saw last year with Barbie and people's finally kind of realizing like, oh, maybe these big IP movies can also be award movies as well. It's like, yeah, they always should have been in the mix. And only the last few years, even with like Black Panther getting a Best Picture nomination and stuff, we finally are letting some of those mainstream things in. But sci-fi is always seen as too nerdy. And even when the Academy goes for something that's kind of out there sci-fi, like The Substance, which normally would be, you know, I'm surprised they embraced it, but like I'm happy because usually they shy away from stuff that's that fantastical, violent sci-fi. Like this is, a Carpenter Cronenberg kind of joint, and for it to get in there is great. But again, like nobody thinks it can win. And so I just think Denis again and again is working at such a high level that people are just taking him for granted. And I don't know. I don't think Dune Messiah is going to be the thing to break through, but hopefully whatever he does after that will be just as good and get people to sit up and take notice.
I actually have a theory. I think they're going to give him. I think they're going to give it. I think they're going to give it to him for Doom Messiah. I think we're going to have a Lord of the Rings kind of situation.
If Dune Messiah is half as good as Dune Part 2, then it will be deserving of any nominations. But that's like, fingers crossed that's the case because the dude has knocked it out of the park twice in a row. And with the source material, I don't know if third time is going to be the charm.
Next up is Best Achievement in Photography. Matt, what do we got?
So, cinematography, the nominees are Lowell Crowley for The Brutalist, Greg Fraser, Dune Part 2, Paul Guillaume, Emilia Perez, Ed Lockman, Maria, and Jarin Blaschke, Nosferatu.
Nosferatu. That movie, I shit you not, folks. Before that, the minute that movie started, I felt like I was having an actual stroke in the movie theater. Like that movie is looking at a perfect picture of death. The lighting, the shadows. If they do not give it to Nosferatu, I'm gonna go and cry.
I will agree with you, only because Greg Fraser won the Oscar for Dune Part 1.
Oh,
So if he got snubbed for Dune Part 2, which I thought actually was even more gorgeous than Dune Part 1, then I would riot. But because he won for the first Dune, I feel like they're not going to give it to him again. And I think Nosferatu is a strong contender, but I'm going to be the dissenting voice. And I'm going to say Brutalist. I think should win because, the 70 millimeter VistaVision looks fantastic. And when they go to view the marble, just the way that looks when they're at the actual place where they cut like the marble slabs, gorgeous, lots of great light and shadow, the way that the camera movements echo a lot of what's going on in the scene. Nosferatu was very stylish, but to the point that half the time I thought I needed a stronger glasses prescription, even seeing the thing like in IMAX, which is crystal clear, but so much of it is soft focuses and so fucking dark that I'm like am I going blind, or is this movie shot by candlelight? And like, yeah, that's the vibes and the mood, but sometimes that drove me crazy. So I do think it was really strong, but I don't know that I think it was, the best of the year, because I did prefer obviously Dune, but like I said, Greg Fraser won for Dune Part 1. But I really did think that the work in The Brutalist, especially for a movie, the story is the movie cost 10 million and it looks like way more. I was really impressed with the cinematography. And I will say the fact that Nickel Boys wasn't nominated is like the standout, like, what are we doing here? That was so groundbreaking with its POV and the way it was shot, that like I get that it's polarizing and take it or leave it, but when there's an innovation that's done in such a proper way to get the snub, especially for like Amelia Perez to get in there, you're just like, what the? Now and again, luckily, if Wicked had gotten nominated, I would have pulled a gun. Like I would have been like, what is happening?
I
Ugliest
know.
ugliest blockbuster of the year, worst backlighting, worst color timing, but that's luckily we got to save that. Um, but Amelia Perez being in here, yeah, it had some nice colorful shots, but I wasn't a big fan.
Yeah, listen, as a native, as a Spanish American, I will only say one word about Amelia Perez on this podcast, or a couple words. I never ever want to see that the 30 minutes of that, the 25 minutes of that film that I saw ever again in my life. That's it.
And I've just got four words to say: penis to a vagina. Yeah. A movie that has some good sequences, but man, by the time that thing ended, and I'm like, this is the ending of this movie. What? Who
Who
got the
wrote this?
awards train? Who got the awards train rolling on this insanity?
You know what? Just to drive the knife in a little bit further, can you explain to us how Amelia Perez came the fuck out of nowhere and surprised us all?
It's all Cannes' fault. That's those damn French. Which of course I kid, but that is, it won the special award at Cannes, and the train kept rolling. And when I saw it at TIFF, there were audiences, who were like giving it a standing ovation and loving it. But before I saw it, I had a bunch of people come up to me and they're like, dude, Amelia Perez, it ain't it. Get ready. And when I saw it, half the crowd was checked out halfway through, where they're just like, this is Mrs. Doubtfire like plotting, and you're like, what is happening here? And so melodramatic, and a musical that is begrudgingly a musical with not a single memorable song. The shortest musical numbers that just leave you scratching your head, saying, if you wanted to make a musical, go all in on making a musical. Otherwise, take these elements out. And also, if they had taken those elements out, I wouldn't have liked a single goddamn thing about it. Whereas those were some of the only elements I liked, but they just felt like they were in a completely different movie.
And on that word, we move on to our next category, which is production design. Matt, what do we got?
All right, so the nominees this year for production design are The Brutalist, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Nosferatu, and Wicked. Now, it's going to go without saying, I want, every time Dune Part 2 shows up as a nomination, I want Dune Part 2 to win. This is one where I do think that Nosferatu is going to win, because when it comes to production design, costuming, the Academy loves Victorian era, 1920s, that kind of look. And to give that a gothic spin, which Nosferatu does, feels like catnip for the Academy. Now, if anything, Conclave is just too traditional. Like the production design of the Vatican, of the quarters where the Pope candidates are are so simple, elegant, and efficient, but like we could go anywhere and see. Like, I would have been surprised if a lot of it was just they went somewhere and shot what was already there. And Wicked, I think that the biggest detraction is the way that all of that production design was filmed and the way it was presented, because it was all really well done, but it's captured so drab, so dull, that I think that Nosferatu is the one. And again, Brutalist just doesn't like brutalism. It just feels very blunt and simple and not showy enough to win the award.
Conclave to me came off flat. It with its production with its costume designing, and its production designing, it just looked like. Look, I've never been in the Vatican. I'll probably never be in the Vatican in my life, but I think a film that deserves that award. I think the film that deserves that award is a film that should scream out of the scream at the audience. So with that with that in mind, my pick would go to, forgive me, Denis, but it goes to Nosferatu.
Yeah, and again, you know, they made a fucking popcorn bucket out of the Dracula coffin, the
They
Count
did. I didn't know
Orlok,
that.
the Count Orlok coffin, because the production design in Nosferatu was so cool that they then transferred that to the popcorn bucket, right? So like, I feel like that's going to be the winner, and especially because Eggers gets his crew to pay such crucial attention to detail, and it's so meticulously presented on screen so that we're luxuriating in the vibes of all the production design, in a way that some of these other movies don't afford such a showcase.
Hmm. Um. So with that word, we move on to the next one. Visual effects. Matt, what do we got?
All right, visual effects. The nominees are Alien Romulus, Better Man, Dune Part 2, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and Wicked. So, Marcelo, three of these movies have monkeys in them. Are you going with one of the monkeys, or are you going with something else?
Not this time. I'm gonna go with Dune. Yeah, because listen, Denis, the first time I went to Arrakis, he took my breath away, and everything that he did visually in Dune One, in Dune Two, he improved upon. Dune Two looks so fucking beautiful. If you like the desert vibe, that like, look, I would probably not survive a day in Arrakis, not even a fucking hour, but I would have a nice beautiful view of sand before I died.
Yeah, you absolutely would. And I think, you know, Better Man, the Robbie Williams monkey, was fine. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes looked amazing, but it wasn't up to the level of the Andy Serkis, Matt Reeves Planet of the Apes movies. And the flying monkeys in Wicked were one of my least favorite parts of Wicked because of the way they were executed. Alien Romulus, I think the aliens come off great, but the deep fake Ian Holm effect that even the director has said, like, if you saw it in the theater, the effect wasn't done, and if you watch it at home, the effect is now better. Well, that's kind of an indictment of your movie's effects. If like when you put it in the theaters, they weren't done, like that's not fair. But Dune Part 2, seamless visual effects. Not once do you feel like you are watching some CGI monstrosity take over. One of the most exhilarating scenes. There's there's multiple sequences in this movie that could be the most exhilarating scene of the year. When Shawnee and Paul are using the rocket launcher to take out the big, sandcrawler thing, absolutely flawless visual effects. When Paul rallies the troops and, he's got big explosions going on, seamless. But Paul riding the sandworm, one of the best sequences of any movie in 2024. And you never once feel like you're watching Timmy on a green screen. You never feel like we're just watching pixels moving on the screen. we feel like we are watching Paul Atreides ride a sandworm. We feel like we are right there with him. And if it doesn't win the award, it's gonna be a sham. Whatever wins is gonna be bullshit. But like these are all, with the honestly, with the exception of Wicked, these are all solid nominations that like I can't be that mad whoever does win, but Dune is so high above all the rest that I will be jaw on the floor if it doesn't win. And again, Wicked, my only thing is like the flying monkeys didn't really land for me. Like when they're in pain and they're shedding the thing, it never felt like there was any creature actually there. And that's a big problem when I'm watching something like this and we're grading the visual effects.
Look, when Paul physically rode the sandworm, I cried. I was in the theater, and I cried like a baby because that scene just ah, it just hit me where I live. Look, I love Wicked. I really, really do. But I think that the way Wicked looks kind of takes it away for me a little bit. Not as much as you, but it just looks flat. There's no anima. Just to echo Matt's point a little bit, if Dune does not take away best visual effects, I will riot. Best lead actor and best lead actress. Matt, what do we got?
All right. So actor in a leading role, Adrian Brody, Timothy Chalamet, Coleman Domingo, Rafe Fiennes, Sebastian Stan, and actress in a leading role, Cynthia Erivo, Carla Sofia Gascon, Mikey Madison, Demi Moore, and Fernanda Torres.
Okay, well, for lead actor, I think it's a given. It's going to be Timmy. If it's not Timmy, I'm going to find some. I'm going to slash somebody's tires.
You know what? It's been back and forth. Adrian Brody has been winning most of the precursors until SAG, and Timmy won SAG. And in other years, SAG happens early enough that Oscar voting hasn't closed, and it can somehow impact the race. Now, this year, voting was already closed before this happened. But if you ask me, Timmy went up there at SAG and gave a fucking rock star acceptance speech. And I know it rubs some people the wrong way, but I thought it ruled when he was like, I'm trying to be one of the greats. Whenever I'm making movies, I'm thinking about my legacy. I want to be one of the best at this. I'm going out there, I'm doing this. And A Complete Unknown could have been a complete shit show if it wasn't for the convincing performance of Chalamet. It wasn't like an impression of Bob Dylan, but like he did his own interpretation in a way that still felt like Bob Dylan, but was like really damn good. Um, Adrian Brody in The Brutalist has a couple of moments that are like devastating. Uh, Now, there's been some controversy about the AI used to fix some of the accent, which I think is overblown because in post sound, they use this technique all the time. But it might have hurt Brody a little bit. But the scene when he gets off the train and his cousin tells him that his wife is still alive, that's going to be the Oscar clip. And if he wins, it's because of that moment. His relief, his pain is so real. Now, I loved Coleman Domingo in Sing Sing. Rafe Fiennes, in general, he's never won. You feel like he's won because he's been around so long and he's been so great that I would not be surprised if they give him like a culmination award. And I think for Sebastian Stan, the nomination is the reward for his performance as Donald Trump. But then you start to wonder, with the political climate the way it is right now, does he actually get a bump because people are thinking more about that performance in light of what's actually going on since this dude has gotten back in office in your country? But I think that if the Academy is playing it safe, they're going to go with Brody. But I actually think like one of our best rising movie stars right now is Chalamet. He's been doing the work. This isn't like his first great performance. This is just the latest great performance in a line of like pretty solid work. Even when a movie is shit, like Beautiful Boy, Chalamet is excellent. And I think that like he did a lot here. He's likable. And for him to be the youngest winner of actor in a leading role would be perfectly fine by me. So I'm rooting for Chalamet, but I still think that it's a two-horse race and that Brody could get in there.
I hear what you're saying about Ray Fiennes, but again, the fact that they give Academy Awards as a mea culpa for not awarding the artists for what they should have been awarded for, that really rubs me the wrong way. I know I listen, I know you don't think I know you don't subscribe to that train of thought, but for me it really annoys me because an Oscar is the hardest thing that you and I could ever get. If we're if we're lucky enough to ever get to the ceremony and by the metric of, oh, we're just going to give it to him because we fucked him over in this year, that sort of sullies the award that I've been kind of chasing my entire life.
Yeah, well, and it's just the way it's always been
I
done.
know, yeah,
Because,
yeah,
like, you know, anybody who thinks that Denzel in Training Day is literally like peak Denzel, well, no. Like, it just happened to be that that year they really wanted to give Denzel an award, and like he did a great job in that movie,
right.
but sometimes, the timing isn't right and they don't win for the one they should have. And then the next or a couple years later, the competition isn't as fierce and we give it to somebody who's always been good for maybe not their best performance,
Mhm.
which is is unfair when they end up winning their like makeup Oscar against someone who actually legitimately deserved it that year. But if it's like a weak crop, then it's kind of the way the game is played, which is too bad. But this is not a weak crop. So like if Ray Fiennes were to win because he hasn't ever won, it would be weird because it's such a strong lineup this year. And then on the female side, anybody who's been watching the award shows knows obviously Fernanda Torres got in there and won a Golden Globe, but I do think that was a fluke. Sorry, I haven't seen the movie, so I can't say for sure, but it has been a back and forth two-horse race between Demi Moore and Mikey Madison. And I think if Honora has like a stellar night, then Mikey could get in there and actually take it for best actress. But I feel like the writing has been on the wall since the Golden Globes that Demi Moore is the way that they are leaning with this. Everybody loves a good redemption comeback arc. It's a brave performance in a bold and off-putting movie, and they love when people do that. And her being so game for where this movie goes and where her character gets to go in the physical transformation, um, it's the kind of thing the Academy eats up, and I really do think she's going to win.
Oh, heaven forgive me. I love Demi Moore, but I got to give it to Mickey Madison for best lead actress. I just her performance for one reason or another. And listen, guys, if you come at me with some bullshit, I'm gonna just eat you alive. Her perform they're not because nobody cares. Um, her performance just hit me in a particular way. It hit me where I live. I used to know girls like her growing up, so that was like uh, a tip of the cap. Listen, and I personally love Demi Moore's performance in The Substance, but I believe like her performance just came off as bitter to me. Like like if she was constructed as a character to be caring and bitter at the same time instead of one fucking emotion like anger because she couldn't fully understand that Margaret Qualley and her were the same person really ticked me off. It really ticked me off that she let her anger and her misunderstanding of the situation drive her crazy. But maybe that was the point.
Well, I do think part of it is the point, and again, it's the way that she conveys everything, and you just know that the clip they'll show is her wiping the makeup off in the mirror,
Yeah.
um, which is just so effective. The amount of emotion and frustration that comes through in just that action. But like, she becomes a decrepit old hag in this movie who like is limping around and like is like a monster, literally a monster. And it's a performance that like a lot of people would have shied away from or maybe not leaned into so hard. And like she goes for it. She
Right.
goes for it, which as authentic and real as the Mikey Madison performance is, to me is as over the top and cartoonish in moments, but I think it's the way that that is just so extreme that they may again, you know, everybody loves a comeback, everybody loves an underdog, and Mikey Madison is like the new ingenue who's going to have this long career. Yes, she was a ghost face. Yes, she got flamethrowered by Leonardo DiCaprio. Like she's had a great career so far, but it's still early days for her. So I think that this might be Demi's only chance, and I think they're not going to let that pass by.
Okay, okay, all right. Listen, all valid points, but I just might be drinking the Sean Baker juice. I think I am.
So now for supporting on the acting side, we've got Yura Borisov for Honora, Kieran Culkin, a real pain, Edward Norton, a complete unknown, Guy Pearce, the brutalist, and Jeremy Strong in The Apprentice. And on the actress side, Monica Barbaro, a complete unknown, Ariana Grande, Wicked, Felicity Jones, The Brutalist, Isabella Rossellini, Conclave, and Zoe Saldana in Emilia Perez. So, Marcelo, what are you thinking for supporting actor?
I am going to surprise. I really, really like Edward Norton in A Complete Unknown. I felt so bad for his character in Complete Unknown because he was such a person who was stuck in his belief systems and he couldn't understand that Timmy didn't want to be in that environment that he became famous for. Like I love people, I love characters that no matter how much information you show them, they stick to their guns. I love when writers create characters that are so one way. Those characters think they are the hero of their movie, and to me that's great acting and that's great character building, and I think that Edward Norton tapped into all of that shit that James Mangold was serving up for his particular role.
Yeah, I think this is a stacked category this year because I loved Edward Norton as Pete Seeger. I thought he was really good. And the way that he shows being stuck when Dylan is like, the times they are a changing, and you know, I can be folk, but I can also be rock, and the people's reluctance. The way that Norton plays that is so perfect. So I would not be upset if he won. Um, Jeremy Strong in The Apprentice as Roy Cohn, an off-putting movie, an absolutely incredible performance. Um, you know, again, it's a movie that didn't do very well with the awards body. Him and Stan both got nominated, but the nomination is the reward. They are not going to win. Yura Borisov in Honora, a lot of people are really happy with that performance. It's low key, but if you watch the movie a second time, you see how integral it is to the journey of the movie. And I agree with that. But, you know, Guy Pearce in The Brutalist, I think, is one of those guys who is so rock solid all the time. And in this movie, he's really good. Like he's such a bastard, but then he has moments where he's like on the verge of charming before he then says exactly the wrong rich asshole thing that brings it right back to earth. Um, but the guy who's been winning every precursor, every single fucking one, is Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain. And I've heard the arguments that he's just playing himself. He's just playing himself. He just won a bunch of awards for the final season of Succession. And so, like, people are kind of sick of him because he literally was just on one of the best TV shows of the last 20 years for a 5-season run. And he just won all the awards for the final season. But his character in A Real Pain is not just him being himself. Yes, he is funny and quirky and a smart ass in the way that Kieran Culkin characters normally are. Even since the early days of drinking a Pepsi in Home Alone as Fuller, where he's kind of gives this smarmy, like, fuck you smile as he's drinking too much Pepsi and he's going to wet the bed. And he's been able to continue that on, 40 years later or whatever. But his character in A Real Pain is so funny, but then has such emotionally devastating moments that are so subtle and fleeting. And again, I keep pointing out, luckily this year they're going to have clips for all of the big acting awards, which I love, when we highlight like the great thing. And his clip that they have used at a few award shows, and I'm sure is going to be the one, is just where he is sitting around the circle and they're talking about why they're going on this trip. And he says, well, I'm here because I want to see where my grandmother came from, because she was my favorite person on the planet, and she just died, and I've been like lost since she died. And like, anybody who says he's just playing himself, you watch that scene, and if he is playing himself, the amount of heart, emotion, pain, and pathos that comes through, well, then 2 minutes later he's cracking dick jokes and being a piece of shit and making his cousin smoke joints on a roof. Like, that range, there's a reason why he's won every precursor, and that train ain't stopping. Kieran Culkin is gonna win this, and like, I'm a huge fan, so I'm here for it.
If Kieran Culkin comes in and it takes the Oscar away from it takes the Oscar away from Edward Norton, I'm not going to be ashamed because I loved his performance. His performance was so layered and so emotional. It really, really struck a chord with me and my grandfather when I went to go see it. Who do you have for actress?
Yeah, for actress, now this is one where Zoe Saldana has won everything, right? Um, and this is the epitome of, we love this person who has been in every franchise under the sun and has been turning in good work since they were a teenager. And now they finally have like a showy awards role in a movie that's shit, and their performance is fine, and they have won every award. So like, yes, I like Zoe Saldana. I would have rather have seen her won an award for being Gamora or Neytiri, or even for fucking Center Stage, than I would for her winning it for Emilia Perez, which, yeah, she gives it her all. Yes, she does the singing and dancing she's asked to. But if we're talking about singing and dancing this year, Ariana Grande in Wicked, a movie that I have done nothing but shit on in this stream, is so freaking good as Galinda. And I like, everything she does is so funny. The singing is great, but the mannerisms, amazing. But I'm not going to go with her, but if she were to win, fine. Isabella Rossellini, Conclave, she's only in it for 5 minutes. Everybody loves Isabella Rossellini, but this is a nothing part. Anybody could have played it. It's just it was like a gimme. And same with Felicity Jones in The Brutalist. I actually think she's the least convincing person in The Brutalist. Not her fault, because she does give a good performance, but I think it was maybe miscast. Compared to like literally everyone else in The Brutalist is like incredible. But as good as Timmy was as Bob Dylan, watching A Complete Unknown, and it starts, and I'm like, hey, it's Phoenix from Top Gun Maverick. I love her. And then she just fucking floored me for 2 hours. Her Joan Baez was so charming. The musical numbers she does, great. Like, the fact that she's not a front runner in this category is shocking to me, because she was like the biggest revelation in that movie. Like, Ed Norton and Timmy, awesome, but I knew that they were awesome. Monica Barbaro, I knew she was great in Top Gun Maverick, but like, I didn't know how deep the bag could go. And then she does this, and I'm just like, she's she almost stole this movie from these two guys who are like at the top of their game. And so if I was picking, I would give it to Monica Barbaro. My second choice would be Grande. And then if we like, I'm not mad at Zoe Saldana because I like her, but I hate hate what she's doing in that movie that is just an ugly movie.
My pick for this category would be Ariana Grande. Every couple years, guys, I go to the movies and I see a movie that reminds me of why I want to make movies. Now, that is totally discarding what me and Matt have been talking about, the way the film looks. But there's something about Wicked that just spoke to my soul in ways that I can't even explain. Now, you have to take into you have to put aside the fact that I'm a song and dance man. So you got to put that aside for a minute. But what Ariana Grande did, she's been wanting to play the role of Galinda since she was a little girl. She went into Christian Chenoweth's dressing room when she was like 9 and said, "I'm going to play you." How fucking awesome is that?
The only thing working against her is that there's another Wicked movie coming out this year, right?
Yeah.
And again, this is a like I don't know why that this is the case, but we do hold it against movies that are part one and part two. If we know there's another one on the horizon, then we don't feel like we have to reward the one that just happened. Because if Wicked had been one movie singular, I do think she would be the front runner for the award. I think hands down, but everybody is like, you know what? Zoe Saldana, been working forever, been reliable, has not been in a movie on screen that is a big Oscar contender. And let's reward her while we can. Ariana, we might be able to give her an award next year for part two. But we don't know. Wicked for Good might be awful.
Awful. And no, but I would like to move a little bit further with what you said, right? You've been assuming the whole show, and I've been assuming that the Academy rewards actors and actresses for roles that they previously did by giving them an Oscar, say, hey, we loved your performance that year, but we couldn't give it to you that year because of this reason or this reason. If Wicked Part Two is awful, doesn't that disclude the Academy's apparent thing?
No, because the Academy's thing would be if 5 years from now Ariana got nominated for a movie that was shit and she won. And it would be she actually won because she should have won 5 years earlier. Right? So you have to, it has to be time. It can't just be the next year we give it to you because we fucked up 1 year ago. It's gotta be at least a few years later for
Okay.
that Academy rule to happen. Or you have to have been working forever and not gotten a nomination when you should have. So like if Amy Adams were to be nominated next year for a terrible movie and win the award, we would all say Amy Adams actually won this award for this awful movie because she should have won it for Arrival, which she wasn't even fucking nominated for.
Mhm.
Right? So that's how the Academy's like, let's reward for the wrong thing goes. Um,
Okay.
so like if Ariana wins it next year, it won't be a mea culpa for this year. It'll just be like that performance was still strong, even in a second, Wicked.
Okay. All right.
That's how I view the way that the Academy, they stick to their guns sometimes and they do weird things, but there's a few weird rules to it.
But guys, we have come to the final reward of the evening. Um, Best Picture, Matt. What are the nominees? For
Nominees for
this?
Best Picture this year are Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. Now, this is one of those things where it used to always be 5 Best Picture nominees. Then they changed it to there could be up to 10 nominees, and it would change depending on voting. So there was some years where it was like there was 8 or there was 9. Now we have it back to a mandated 10 nominees. Now, everybody always says it's nice because we get more nominees and stuff that is more mainstream can sneak in there. What has happened is usually we get one or two like big blockbusters that find their way in. We're getting more and more foreign language films that are finding their way in here as a result of the 10. And then there are, you could boil it down to like the 5 would have been the actual nominees if there was only 5, like back in the day. And I think that's clearly what's happening here, because obviously, as much as I love it, Dune Part 2 would not be in here if there was only 5 nominees. I think it's the best movie of the year, but the Academy is not going to award it as such. The substance, thank God it's here. It's nice to show that the Academy can be flexible and go with something super weird but well made. Wicked, cultural phenomenon. They had to put it in here because it is well made and it shows that they're not completely out of touch with what the mainstream likes. A Complete Unknown is the likable, well-trod biopic that's done at such a high level, you can't ignore it. So that gets in there. And then, you know, the two foreign language, Emilia Perez and I'm Still Here, kind of because the Academy is now a much more international voting body, they sneak in. I do think that the real race that we're talking about here right now for the Oscar, the top 3, I think, are number 1, Anora, which I do think is going to win. I don't think there's going to be a major upset. There has been times this year where it's ping-ponged back and forth. I think number 2 is still The Brutalist, even though its stock has fallen considerably recently. And because of SAG and because of BAFTA, Conclave is actually like, I think, number 3 right now and could pull off a, I don't want to say a Green Book like upset, but like an upset where if the other 2 movies end up splitting the vote somehow as the like artistic, well-rounded movies, then it could sneak in. Obviously, Emilia Perez shot itself in the foot with all the controversies around it, but I do think at the end of the day, Anora should win this because it is what the Academy kind of like, somebody, an auteur with a vision working at the highest level. It's funny. It's dramatic. In a few years, we won't look back on it as an embarrassment. And then there will always be the people who are going to be like, The Brutalist should have won, and be like the contrarians that a few years later will say like, you know, the Academy got it wrong, but it's also not an embarrassing choice. So I think it's going to be Anora, but I will not be surprised if The Brutalist or Conclave somehow manage to pull off an upset.
I'm gonna go with Honora, and the reason for that, last night I saw a speech that Sean Baker gave. I don't know what award show he was at. Matt, you could
It
probably
was
help
at
me
the
with it.
Spirit Awards.
Thank you, folks. Matt Crandall saves my ass so many times. I'm so lucky to have him as a friend and as a co-host on my podcast. He's wonderful. Honora, I think. Listen, I think Honora is the type of movie that the Academy needs right now, because the Academy for the last couple of years they've been they've been like a bunch of old men with sticks up their asses. Am I wrong about this? Or have they always been like that?
They have always been like that, and every once in a while, the stick comes out and something like Parasite wins Best Picture, and you're like, oh, okay. But then every once in a while, then it's, you know, a Green Book or something wins Best Picture, and the stick goes back.
If Honora doesn't win, I wouldn't mind Conclave winning, because I thought the direction in that was really really masterful. And Amelia Perez, if that wins, ugh, whatever.
You know what? And I don't think you have to worry because it was already an uphill battle because it's a Netflix movie, and
Yeah.
Netflix still has the stigma and has still been chasing and can't ever get it across the line. And they finally had the one where they thought maybe they could get it to go. And then they had the director speak out and say a lot of ugly shit. And then they had the lead actress, her tweets came back to bite her tenfold and doubled down. And like that took that movie from literally number 2 in the race to number 10. And I do think, you know, like I said, Brutalist, Conclave have the chance of being an upset. And even A Complete Unknown is just a fastball down the middle of like what the Academy likes. You know, an easy to take biopic that's a little over 2 hours but has a lot of great songs. Whereas I wouldn't be surprised to find out that people in the Academy didn't finish The Substance, didn't bother to watch Nickel Boys, didn't even see I'm Still Here, right? So like there are a few movies that I think a lot of people in the Academy voting, and even The Brutalist being so long, there are probably voters who were like, I ain't watching this thing, you know. So we'll see. Whereas Anora, 2 hours, as long as they were ready to modulate their volume when 1 hour of the movie is pure yelling, then I'm sure that they could handle it.
As with every Oscar season or award ceremony, I obviously have no idea what to expect going in. But when I come out of the award ceremony, most of the time, I remember why I want to be a storyteller and a filmmaker. Matt, any final thoughts?
I'm just hoping that it's an entertaining show. I can't wait to see Conan O'Brien host it. And if there are a few surprises along the way, that'll be great, because this year is the year where Best Picture has been the least sewn up in the last few years, but a lot of the acting categories, especially supporting, feel like done deals. So I won't be mad if we get a few genuine surprises, as long as those genuine surprises don't involve Emilia Perez.
Just real quick, Matt, where can people find you if they want to do so?
We can just hang out and log some movies on letterboxd.com/MDC30003000.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. In the comments down below, if you watch the Oscar ceremony, or if you watch this video before the actual ceremony, drop your picks down in the comment section. But thank you so much for watching. And if you want to talk to me before the Oscar ceremony, you can also catch me on Letterboxd, and we can log some movies together. And as I often say, guys, I'll see you when I see you.
So much happened here, and so much is about to.